Well, thanks, Eboo, for making yourself available, giving us a little bit of time to find out about you and your work and your thinking about diversity, and I guess you might say ecumenism among people of faith and communities of faith. Would that be a fair description of what you're involved with?
So, ecumenism is a word typically used in Christianity, which is wonderful. It was, I think, typically references relationships between Catholic, Protestant, and Orthodox traditions. So we use the word pluralism more, encompassing everybody from atheists to Zoroastrians. But the basic idea you got is exactly right. The notion that faith or secular identity ought to be a bridge of cooperation, not a barrier of division, that there are lots of examples of this in civil society, and we should look to find those examples and expand them.
Well, I believe very much in what you're talking about, whatever word we use to describe it.
Yep.
Eboo, there may be some people who follow Kolbe Times who have not heard about you, have not heard about your story and what you're involved with. And maybe it'd be helpful to back up a little bit and talk about how you came to be involved in that kind of knitting together of efforts among people of different backgrounds and different faiths and the different faith communities. How did you end up getting involved with all of that?
Sure. So when I was in college at the University of Illinois in the early mid-1990s, it was an era of identity-based activism, which I was quite involved with. I spent a period of that time kind of angry at the world, shaking my fist at the system, so to speak. I think justified though it might have been, it is not an approach to social change that resonates in my core. I'm much more kind of a positive, optimistic person at my core. And as I connected more deeply with my birth religious tradition of Islam, especially its Ismaili Muslim variant, you find there very much an inspiration to build institutions based on the notion of Islam as a religion where God creates human beings as their servant and representative, their Abd and Khalifa, his hub and Khalifa. And recognizing that religious diversity was an enormously important part of diversity that was too little talked about, at least in American society in the late 20th century, certainly in American society now, it just felt like a place where I could make a difference and that I would be inspired to make a difference. And that, over the course of history, the movements that have most inspired me, from Hind Swaraj in South Asia to the struggle in South Africa to civil rights in the United States, have all had an interfaith character, and that is worth lifting to the top, and it's worth extending those efforts into today. So I started IFYC. The idea kind of hit me in summer of 1998, and I ran a variety of projects when I was in graduate school between 1998 and 2002. We got our first grant from the Ford Foundation in 2002 and have been building a real-world institution ever since.
Why is it called Interfaith Youth Core?
Well, at first, we focused largely on young people. And part of that was because we were young at the time, and lots of folks involved in interfaith work were not young, and we felt like there was a different energy in young people. I am not young anymore. I just turned 46 and happily in middle age. And our programs still involve young people. We do a lot of work directly with college students, but we've expanded dramatically. So, we work with companies, we work with college administrators, we work with governments, all on the idea that religious diversity ought to be positively and proactively engaged in a way where faith is understood as a bridge of cooperation that can inspire us to serve together to help others.
Well, that term certainly seems to be relevant these days. There seems to be a lot of division, a lot of fear, a lot of concern about people of other backgrounds, people of other religions. I don't want to dwell on that, but maybe you could just talk about the pulse that you're reading in terms of division right now.
Well, I mean, that's certainly the story that is told kind of most often as the kind of narrative of our time. You can find plenty of evidence for that, but I'm always interested in where is something going well and how do we expand on that. And so I think things typically go well in athletic leagues. I think they typically go well in hospitals. I think they typically go well in parks. And I'm interested in finding the places where people with different identities and divergent ideologies gather and cooperate to help others. And disaster relief to, college sports and to scientific laboratories, it's happening all the time. And I'd much rather focus on those spaces and say, how do we have more of these?
I would agree. I think there's what I would call a gold mine to be found and to be explored around people of different backgrounds, different faiths, being bridged in some kind of way or some kind of place to bring about an exponential increase in efforts for the common good. Now, I wonder if you can identify a specific example or two where that's happening, where that gives you a lot of hope.
Well, disaster relief is one example. After any hurricane, after any tornado, after any earthquake, after any severe storm, you will find Southern Baptists and Catholics and Jews and Muslims and Mormons and secular humanists working together to give people hot meals and safe places to sleep. And it happens all the time. And it is so common that we forget how special it is. Hospitals is another example. At a typical hospital, you'll have a Muslim doctor working with a Jewish physician, working with a Hindu physician's assistant, being supported by a nurse who is a Jehovah's Witness at a hospital founded by a Catholic religious order that is run by a secular humanist who grew up Buddhist. And that's actually like virtually any hospital in North America or Europe, and probably in other places around the world as well.
How about where you live? Where do you see good things happening like that?
I'm in the sports leagues my kids play in and the schools that they go to in the organization that, I'm a part of building at IFYC. We just started a great project at IFYC called Black Interfaith, which explores the variety of ways that people from different religions have cooperated in the Black American experience. I mean, the truth is it's everywhere, it's everywhere. And I don't want to raise the volume on a narrative of division when there are so many examples of cooperation. I believe in a social change philosophy that highlights the positive and says, how do we have more of this?
Mm-hmm. I want to bring up an example here in Canada. There is an effort on the part of disabled Muslims to join forces with people not only of the Muslim faith, but of all different kinds of faith and racial backgrounds in helping each other to help look after their disabled kin.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful. I think that's so powerful. And I think that you'll find different kinds of examples of that in different places. Look, part of this is that at the core of all religions and secular philosophies is this notion that human beings have dignity and that we ought to build spaces and civic institutions and societies which cherish and strengthen that dignity.
Maybe you could fill us in a little bit more of where Muslims come from that drives this effort that you're talking about.
Yeah, so, every night when we say our prayers in my house, we read a verse of the Quran. It almost always falls under one of three themes: mercy, monotheism, or the Prophet Muhammad, right? And that's Islam in a nutshell, right? It is a monotheistic tradition, believes in a very focused way in one God, the same God that is shared by Jews and Christians and all, in Jewish and Christian scripture, and we believe we all share. Mercy as the core ethic. There's the classical teaching in Islam is God is merciful and will be merciful to those who are merciful to others. And we believe that the final prophet of God is the Prophet Muhammad. May the peace and blessings of God be upon him. And he is in the prophetic line, which begins with Prophet Adam, that includes Noah and Moses and Abraham and Jesus and Muhammad, and that they bring a continuous revelation, which basically centers mercy and monotheism. That's Islam in a nutshell, right? The Quran, we believe, is the final revelation. It is the completion of the Hebrew Bible and the revelation brought by Jesus. And we are meant to live up to the ideal that God sets forward for us in the Quran, which is that we are his Abd and Khalifa, his servant and representative on creation, and that we are meant to be Rahmatul Alameen, nothing but a special mercy upon all the worlds.
Eboo, tell me about your new book that's going to be coming out here. We need to build field notes by diverse democracy.
Yeah, so it's a book about what does it look like to build a healthy, religiously diverse democracy. And what I focus on is a good society is made up of networks of good institutions. And good institutions are places where it is easier for human beings to be good and easier for human beings to cooperate. So it is the story of that social change philosophy. It is the story of building IFYC. It's the story of a number of other civic institutions that have been built, including within the world of higher education, within the world of religion. It's the story of a metaphor for a diverse democracy, which the best metaphor for that, I think, is a potluck, where people are invited to bring distinctive traditions from their identities and backgrounds, and somehow by people from a range of backgrounds contributing, we make a feast that the whole community can enjoy. So that's the centerpiece. That's the center of the book.
Well, that's very much like the thinking we have here in Canada of multiculturalism. That's been permeating thinking, at least nationally, of a quilt of people of different backgrounds coming together, creating this more beautiful picture than otherwise.
So quilt is another great metaphor for a diverse democracy. I like to eat, so I like the notion of potlucks. And the other thing about a potluck is that the image is people bringing different dishes and them being mixed and matched in different ways.
I love potlucks too. My dad was American. Maybe that's where it comes from, this big appetite that comes with America.
We are a people of great appetites here in the United States. Sure.
Well, look at this is great, Eboo. I just want to give you one last chance here before we end today to give me something that you're hopeful about going forward.
I am hopeful that more and more people are saying we can do better, and I am taking responsibility for my part of that. And our role in that at IFYC is building this institution. But this notion of taking responsibility to make things better, I think, is hugely important. Hannah Arendt said that that's actually the definition of education, is the willingness to take responsibility to make things better.
That's beautiful. Well, thanks, Eboo.
Thanks, Fred. I appreciate your time and your work.